Welcome to the Science of Fishing, where we deliver the latest reports and most up-to-date tactics to help you catch more fish. Each episode, we'll get into what's biting and break down exactly what you need to do to get out there and catch them up. Special thanks to Black Reef Spearfishing for sponsoring this podcast. Now, here's your host, markfarag.
What's going on, everybody? I'm here with Quade Kirby of Black Reef Spearfishing. Obviously, they're one of our sponsors. We're here in the shop today. I'm going to talk to Quade a little bit about how he brought up Black Reef, his experience spearfishing, and just me and Quade's relationship going way back. So what's going on, Quade?
Not much, man. Just playing around with some new products in here. Was waiting for you to get through all that traffic, so yeah, I finally made it.
What do you got over there?
Yeah, so this is one of my latest creations. It's called the origami. It's how do I even explain this thing? It looks like an alien gun, but it's panels of carbon fiber that have been oriented. So it's super hydrodynamic and fits bands internally on the gun. Yeah, there's been all sorts of crazy contraptions I've created over the years, but this one's probably the top on that list. As you know, I've been developing spear guns for quite some time. I started off with pole spears. And I was like, you know what, it's time I try pushing through the other products. And it's been an ongoing development and our creation of probably, I'd say, 2 years of R&D onto this thing. But it's pretty crazy. I'm just trying to make really light composite technology oriented spear guns that still maintain simplicity. A lot of people like to overcomplicate things here, and I'm just trying to keep the complexities in the design, but very intuitive with function. So yeah, that's kind of been the direction I've been going in.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So yeah, dude, you've come out with you've been developing a lot of new products. Obviously, I've seen a bunch of them. It's great stuff. You know, you've got your pole spears, you've got your spear guns. Tell us a little bit how Black Reef started and how you got into all this.
Yeah, so I went to University of Miami with Mark, actually, and that's where we met. And about 3 years ago, I was getting more heavily into spearfishing, and I just realized a lack of just super quality, nice products in the industry. Plus, the things that were subpar, like the products, they just, they were so expensive. And so I was like, I'm studying engineering. I've been looking for a little side business, and I can, for the same price as, buying something, I could create my own. And so that's how I really started. I was like, I'm going to make something that is at least costing the same and it's going to be the main quality of all these other brands in the industry that I was looking at. My first stuff was really junk. It was not, and it did cost me a lot more for less quality. But I'm a very hard-headed, determined person. And over the course of studying at engineering at I'd bring pole spear models into class. I would talk with my professors. It was pretty awesome. And so pretty much every project I did, my classmates got sick of hearing about pole spears, man. Like every like project I would do it on my brand and on my my products. But I just learned so much by being able to actually have something functional in the real world to present my teachers and orient my education towards. And so I just became obsessed with it. And and so as you know, it was probably sophomore year, I really kind of went in with it. And then junior year, and I was building spears on a pong table on my balcony of my apartment for 3 years, up until I had this shop really about 6 months ago. I really kind of got in a position where I was not building things on workbenches in my living room. So it's pretty crazy to see where we're at now with it. But yeah, it was definitely a labor of love. Started in college, and about a year ago when I got out of college, I really launched the brand and pushed the products into more stores. And I'm still at such a growth phase. Like the website hasn't changed much, but man, the products have changed so much since then, with newer technologies that I've educated myself on, more prototyping. I've 3D printer in house now and all sorts of other goodies that I can really dial in my craft with. And so yeah, I really got started just jumping over to Bahamas. Like we used to run over on your little center console back in college. How big was that thing?
20 feet.
20 foot. We went all the way to Bahamas using the prototypes and
Yes,
shooting
sir.
them at big groupers and such. That was crazy.
Yeah, man, we had a good time over there. You remember when we saw that tiger shark, or two of them? I think one was like
It's two.
11 foot and the other one was like 8 feet.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, dude. I cannot believe this. Yeah, so it was the end. I gotta give a little background. So
Oh
we,
yeah,
we ran over and shot a lot of fish on a random weekday,
a lot.
after we were probably skipping class or something. But we were up near K Sal and no, not K, is it
We
K
were the
Sal?
Great Isaacs up
Great
there.
Isaacs, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were at Great Isaacs and jumped in the water in like 40 feet. And I remember I shot a lobster that was like football size. He was like 7, 8 pounds, and I'm resurfacing, and you're flagging some. I think you're flagging me down. Someone else got in the
Yeah.
boat. I was the only diver, which was very dumb. For the circumstances, and y'all were flagging me. I thought someone was injured, but I hear you guys screaming shark, and I'm like, it's Bahamas, of course there's sharks. Nah, I look underwater and I see a truck heading towards me with another truck in tandem. It was two 10, 11-foot tigers that were coming up on me. Yeah, and I remember I was swimming back to the boat, and all that's replaying in my head is a friend of mine named Dante. He was diving out of West Palm, and we're always around tigers, and he's talking about touching the shark to let it know that you're not scared of it. And I was like, I gotta touch this fucking thing. And so I'm like swimming back, holding this lobster like a football, like getting ready to Heisman Trophy these freaking tiger sharks. Threw the lobster in the boat, jump in the boat, but they were following me for a good 50, 60 feet, and I had never been in the water with a tiger. And they are like wolves. They're like water wolves, the way they just kind of circle you and just they also know like one came left side, one came right side, and I'm just spear out, lobster in hand, like head on a swivel, just trying to keep these things from trying to rip my leg off. That was crazy.
I know, dude. They looked like they were the size of the boat in the water.
Yeah, but I think they were harmless, but man, they when they come up on you like that, just kind of stalking you, it was creepy. It was
Dude,
eerie, but it was dope. It
I
was
know,
really cool.
dude. It was cool, man. And then we had our last trip, which was awesome too. That
Yeah,
was a good time.
that was crazy.
Marco and those guys.
Yeah, jumping around, and we were finding APs and random spots and
Oh yeah,
everything. That was crazy.
that was awesome, dude.
Yeah, those that I do want to note on that definitely bring rain gear if you're going to Bahamas, because storms will come out of nowhere. That's what happened, and
Oh
it
yeah.
was literally lightning and thundering so aggressively that chunks of the buildings in the Bahamas were losing like pieces. The concrete was falling off of them when we were underneath those
Dude, the whole
outcroppings.
all of Bimini lost power.
Yeah, that was nuts. And that's like
Yeah.
been the third or fourth time I've been over there and something nuts like that has rolled up. There's something electricity there. And I actually have a good story. When I was heading over to Bimini, and I think this was sophomore year of college, spring break. We were on a sailboat and we were heading over there, and the long story short, our compasses started floating because there were big heat lightning storms in the distance, and we literally lost our navigation. Like
Oh
everything went
wow.
out. There's something magnetic or electrical in the air there. Like it was crazy. Yeah, and like we lost our compasses, just started floating, and then they would randomly go back to, being fully functional. And even on our phones, we were using our phones, and our maps would just rotate, and because it was just not picking up on the direction. It was crazy. Yeah, and the storms came out of nowhere on us that time too, and that
Yeah,
was nuts. Yeah, we got lucky. We were camping on those islands, and then
I know,
we
bro.
saw the storms coming, and I think it was right before sunset, we beelined it to make it to the main island. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That was a nutty trip. I remember just sleeping on the front of the boat with a tarp over me,
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
just had
just
a
like,
tarp on you.
dude, I
Oh my
know.
God,
It
that
was
was
crazy.
crazy.
You guys were underneath one of the hotels or something like that.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
were like bugs to a light. There were just big light strips under there, and
yeah.
I didn't sleep at all, and I can't believe the amount of fish we speared despite no sleep at all.
Dude, I know. It was a
Yeah,
full day the next day, but we did it.
yeah, yeah. No, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I got to throw around a lot of black reefs on that trip. That was
Oh
pretty
yeah,
cool.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Well, you've also had some cool trips without me. You went and you speared off of a
seaplane.
seaplane, right? You
Yeah,
speared off a seaplane. Can you tell us a little bit about that for the people that don't know?
yeah. So a few years ago, we had the luxury of jumping over on some floats off of a seaplane, and so we planned the trip. Some really good family friends of ours just acquired a seaplane, so we were very spoiled with that. And they said, "Do you want to try spearfishing off of it?" And we were like, heck yeah. And so we coordinated with the captains. We actually scheduled out like a flight path that went over some low-lying reefs in shallow water off of Bimini and Berry Islands. And we coordinated for the actual strips that we would land on. And we landed on these strips of reef, and the Berry Islands was a waste of time. That area was very difficult. We had a lot of trouble deciphering what was reef and what was seagrass, because when you're high up like that, you just can't even tell. You cannot tell. But intuitively, we've dove some of these regions, and so we headed back over to Bimini, and we had 1 to 2 mile an hour winds. It was perfect. We could spot the reef line. We landed on it and jumped in, and the plane's shade and shape attracted African pompanos right up on us. So as soon as we jump off the floats, big APs rolled up on us, and we were throwing the pole spears at the APs. And we shot like 3 or 4 and put them in the plane. And then we literally like had coolers on the floats, and we would dump the APs into the coolers, go back down, try to shoot more. And it was just crazy what we were heaving at these things. And then we threw all the coolers in the plane and then flew back, and we had to put our coolers through the security systems with x-rays of the fish in the coolers. And these things were so big, the APs, that they were hanging tails out of it. So we were getting off the plane with like fish tails hanging out of coolers, and it was nuts. It was a really good time. Yeah, but it was very challenging because the plane itself, when you would land it, you couldn't really, like, you can't tow around, you don't really have anything for reference. And so we just kind of had to guesstimate, and it was very challenging. If we didn't have perfect conditions, it would have been near impossible, but it
Right.
was worth it. I mean, the fact that the vibrations in the plane and the shape just brought in these African pompanos and made it entirely worth it. And it was a one hit wonder. We jumped in, shot them, and then we didn't see any other fish the rest of the time. So it was really like a perfect mission. Yeah, it was a little
That's
strike
crazy.
mission.
That's
Yeah.
crazy, dude. You guys are probably the only ones that have spearfished off of a plane before.
So I thought that, and then I recently was in Costa Rica with this old man that was 70 years old, still jumping in and out of the sides of the center console, and we were shooting yellowfin tunas. And I'm telling him the story, and I'm like, "Yeah, we're the only ones I think that have ever done it." And he goes, "I remember doing that in the 1980s." Yeah, he's like, "We only had slings though, you know." And I'm like, "Yeah, you wish you had black reefs on
Yeah, exactly.
it."
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody should be using Black Reef now. Your product is, in my opinion, and I may be a little biased, but it's absolutely superior to everything else
I
that
try.
I've tried out there.
It's difficult to make something that produces power but also maintains a lot of like modularity and actually can be functional and useful in almost every environment, because we were just talking prior to jumping on the podcast how everyone wants something different. So I really got into this by building something for myself, and I knew that I wanted something that could handle the more common fish you're going to see. Most fish you're going to be shooting are, they're under 10 pounds, but on occasion you'll see something big. And
Oh
that's the
yeah.
whole point of my products, all of them. Whether it's the pole spears, spear guns, even, we got fancy roller slings now, even we're trying to make. But I just wanted to make full spectrum products with high quality components. I wanted to make stuff that could really just, you could really use it in any environment and still be able to load it and shoot it, whether it's a big fish, small fish. And it's just, the challenge is that these things are manually operated. And so
Right.
because of that, these things are an extension of your body, and everyone's body's different. My strength versus someone else's strength could be different, my reach. And so I'm just trying to make more lightweight stuff, leverage the titanium and carbon fiber technology that I use, just to make something that is very stiff and strong and powerful, but still maneuverable. And like I said, that's the biggest challenge, is making it, one size fits all.
Right.
And so that's where I've realized that I can't just make one thing. I have to make a few different things, because a master of all is a master of none. But I try to get as close to that, everything fits all kind of size and strength, and everything else going into the products as I can. And so that's really what my angle is.
Right, man. I know you put a lot of R&D, you put a lot of effort into it, a lot of time testing all these products. And,
Yeah.
like you said, most people are going to shoot 10-pound fish, maybe smaller.
Hmm.
But you got some world records on your spears, right?
Yeah,
Quite a
African
few.
pompano, gag. There's a handful of others as well that are pending that I won't mention yet. And there's also some other products that I have running around out there that no one really knows about. Yeah, we're doing some really, really secretive stuff. I just, it's the biggest thing I noticed is everyone in this industry is copying each other. Everyone's trying to do the same thing. And because of that, you're just getting all of the same stuff out there and you're also getting the same problems. And so for me, like my passion, we were speaking of that earlier, is the engineering craft I do. Because of my background in engineering, like my passion's the engineering, not so much just the spearfishing, which I do love, but I just have this passion for ingenuity and just cutting edge that most other people they don't really emphasize. And I see why. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. That's why having it be a passion of mine, it makes it almost seamless and easy. It really does. Like there's no one really playing around with like we got bamboo as a product that we're working with.
Oh
And
yeah.
everyone's using unsustainable teak, which they actually don't allow on boats anymore. So you're deforesting, and so I'm thinking of sustainability. Lionfish pole spears, I'm pushing lionfish stuff pretty heavy. And it's becoming more of a passion and an art than anything. It really is. And so that's where it gets challenging for me to look at the business aspect, because there are things that I need to do just to keep the doors open and such. But at the end of the day, like my passion is truly in the innovation side. And that's why, like, for those that can see this video or even look on my site, you can see I got some pretty crazy cutting edge stuff that I'm designing and working with. And that's purely because I just love the craft. I
Well,
really do.
yeah, man. Yeah, I know you've been putting a lot of crazy stuff into these spear guns that you've been developing. You have like an AR trigger mech in there, right? Like
Yeah, it uses
it's
a
crazy.
flat trigger, an Air 15 handle,
Yeah.
lets people change around the sizes and really switch everything out modular. It's really nice. Yeah, the mechs are, that there's so many aspects of these things that I could review, whether it's the pulleys on it, because I'm using rollers versus traditional spear guns, or the mechanisms. People use Euro specs and like, then this opens up an interesting topic that I want to highlight. So, Europe is a huge innovation center for spearfishing because the Mediterranean is very depleted of fish, and this is my opinion. It's depleted of fish, which has led to a lot of people looking at alternative methods because they're not catching anything on rod and reel. So now you have people diving 100 feet with these spear guns that are very technical to try to shoot fish. And the Americas have started to catch up to that because they're realizing how much fun it is. And being more oriented towards fishing, it's getting difficult. It's getting very challenging.
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing. I mean, it's fun to go out and fish, but there's nothing really kind of more lame than when you are intensely trying to catch a fish and you come home empty-handed.
Yeah.
Well, now you can increase the game by jumping in the water, and it's more on you instead of it being a game of chance. And so we're starting to see people taking innovation from Europe and using it here. You're getting people importing products and starting to try to do that. But that there's just this sort of dissociation where people think that stuff that is applicable over there is useful here, but I'm trying to focus on products that are developed for here, not so much for the Mediterranean. And so like there's a lot of people that will copy European methods instead of focusing on the fish that we have and the diving styles that we have here in the US. So it's very different. But yeah, we were seeing fish populations changing here.
Oh
The
yeah.
fish are starting to become pressured. I firmly believe that the stupider fish, quote unquote, are getting killed off, and then you have a bunch of really smart fish that are getting bred and they're having offspring, and then those fish carry those genetics. That's how animals survive. We adapt and change, and I firmly believe these latter generations of fish are actually smarter than they were in generations past. And then, it's just what I'm seeing. And, I'm sure that there's more, scientists that could chime in on that. But we're just seeing smarter fish that are not taking hooks. They're not wanting that. Even the spearfishing is getting harder. I mean, especially tied in with sharks. I've jumped
Oh
in the
yeah.
water here, man, and I've plucked bands on like a guitar string, and like I've had big bull sharks beeline straight up. And in some areas like West Palm, you want that to happen because you're aiming for cobias off the back of the bull sharks. But man, that's sketchy. You're not even shooting your spear gun, and animals are used to hearing a spear gun fire off or for a band popping. Like that's very scary.
They know, man. They know the sound of the boats now, especially
Yeah,
down here in South
yeah,
Florida. It's become a problem in my opinion. I
it
think
really
where it's
has.
just
Yeah,
I don't know, man. It's
it's
crazy stuff.
shark populations are really high, and people,
Yeah,
we're in the waters, we're seeing it. And I can tell
exactly.
you, there's fish that, and there's, sharks that used to migrate that don't really migrate. They're staying local on reefs. And you're starting to hear and see people that are dealing with the same sharks attacking divers for their fish and doing those kinds of things. They really are. The sharks are great, but just like anything, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And there's an unequal quantity of fish being taken per sharks being saved. And that's just what I've seen, and that's my opinion. But I think that there's definitely a shark issue going on here in the Caribbean. People are the protection efforts are amazing. They're doing a great job, but I think that the pendulum has swung the other way.
Yeah.
I think that it's a really big issue, and it's very much threatening divers. And it's just like becoming even more of a hazard, even for the sharks themselves. There's an imbalance, and it's disrespectful to those animals to have that much pressure where when they're swimming around, they can't even find their own food because there's so many of them. And so, it's a needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, man.
Needs to
I
be
agree with
addressed.
you. And it like you said before, like it sucks.
Yeah, yeah. There's
And like
nothing.
when you're fishing and you pull up half a fish, every other fish because a
Yeah,
shark ate it, it's just it gets to be annoying. And I think the sentiment up the East Coast, even all the way up the Carolinas, the shark problem's gone all the way up there. So it's not
yeah,
just down here.
yeah. And you're getting more and more people on the water with center console industries blowing
Oh
up.
yeah.
You see in those crazy new and Submarine is a little bit older now, but the 600, series, Mercuries are allowing for bigger boats to be made that are center consoles, and people are looking
Oh
for
yeah.
stuff to do on those boats. So, it helps me. I'm selling gaffs and spears and whatnot to them, guns. But the thing is like there's a big lack of education with that, and like that touches on a whole nother thing that people need to practice, they need to train, and they need to think. And there's a lot of logic missing in society right now, I think. But it's very important that people practice and study the industry, and they study the tools that they have and actually understand the water they're in. And there's more and more people running over to Bahamas and touching on better, healthier environments. But even over there, like my old neighbor of mine, as I've been developing my business, he's kept in touch with me, and he owned a big sport fisher back in the day, and this is probably like say he's in the 70s, so I'd say 60s, 70s, 80s. He was going over towards Walker's Cay, and he talks about just how the fish has changed. The fishery has changed a lot, even from then. People used to be able to go and just get coolers of fish, and because of that, it's changed. And so even over there, there's getting to be so much pressure. And I think eventually they're going to have people, allow people to use spear guns, because like it's getting to where like my technology is great. Anything within 10 feet, you're going to be able to slap with a pole spear,
Yeah.
which is far more than it has been for a long time. But even then, there's fish that won't even let you in sight of them.
You
And
need a
it's
spear gun at that point.
yeah, and like the Bahamians aren't going to talk about it. They won't even budge on that for another, I'd say, 20 years or so, if
Really?
even. Yeah, it's going to be a long time, but yeah, I mean, there's a whole environments over there you can't even fish. Like you can't
Yeah.
spearfish blue water. There's nothing to shoot blue water in Bahamas. You can chase fish with a pole spear, but they really don't let you near them. You need really big gear. Yeah, and that's honestly been a big thing too. Like, a lot of people are using these like man, they're using these whale hunting like spear guns. Like, yeah, they got like 7 bands on them, and it's cool. I mean, you look like a beast loading that thing,
Oh
but
yeah.
you're shooting a tuna, and you guys know how fast those tunas are. They don't hesitate,
No.
and so
They
like
just rip.
yeah, you take a shot and you whiff, and then you take 10 minutes to reload your spear gun. That's why I'm trying to work on these smaller, high output stuff, like this one in my hand. This is a blue water gun. It's tiny. It's
It's
tiny,
a first
tiny.
of its kind, internal bands and all.
Yes, yeah, and so I'm trying to make something that can maneuver really quickly, because these fish are getting quicker, they're getting smarter, and the technology has to keep up with that.
Right.
And so fishing has no lack of innovation. Spearfishing needs to be the same. Yeah, but honestly, like even a lot of these industries, they're it's crazy, man. Like they'll latch onto these concepts that just never budge. Like cork drag, a good example. Like a lot of big oceanic reels have cork drags still today. The guys are using these big internationals that have cork in them.
Yeah.
Like cork will just degrade like that or fry out. and people are starting to really change, like with the ceramic stuff and everything, but the technology is just now starting to mend. But most of it's going and funneling into boats. It's going into the technology there. You got Seymour,
Oh
but
yeah.
the reels and everything else have been a little bit behind on
Yeah.
that. Yeah, which is a whole nother topic.
No, it's crazy, man. I mean, you've been working on a reel. You got the first of its
Yeah.
kind. Your fly fishing reel, right?
Yeah, I really should. We were talking
Pretty
about this. I
badass.
should probably slow down and just finish what I start. But yeah, the that's it's difficult when you see something that is another stepping stone away, but it's so attainable because it crosses over secretly with a lot of what you're working on.
Of course, yeah.
And so, like, I've been working on this fly reel. Yeah, that's a lot of my guys that are using pole spears and such. They use, I personally love fly fishing. I think it's an art. I love the idea of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is quite the skill, just to cast a fly on a really difficult fish. And so I made a fly reel for myself,
Yep.
and it ties right in with like the spearfishing art, because spearfishing is an art itself. You have to really know how to maneuver these niche industries.
Finesse game.
Yeah, it's a finesse game. It is definitely a skill and a craft. But yeah, I've been working on a fly reel that it honestly evolved from a spear gun reel I developed. That's the root of it. I was designing a spear gun reel, and I was like, this reel would be great for a fly reel. Designing. I'm always engineering on AutoCAD,
Oh yeah.
and I adjust the design and played around with it. And then I just went down the rabbit hole of concepts for, yeah, I designed a drag system that's state of the art on a hubless fly reel, and it looks like a donut, but it's a very fancy donut. It's pretty cool.
Dude, like you said before, it's like a Rolex.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
beautiful.
It is. I tried to make the Rolex of the fly fishing industry, but it's just cool to see that I've had pretty much all of these concepts come together simultaneously, all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's an interesting timeline. All the innovation that I've done, even though fly fishing looks different, looks like something like a fly reel is totally different from what I'm doing, but it's a lot of the same exact materials I've been learning and practicing with in spearfishing.
Right.
And so it all overlaps in this really advanced equation, really. And I'm going to be hopefully releasing all of this stuff at once and not at once, but simultaneously. I don't want to overload everybody. They're gonna be like, "What?" Yeah. But it's all tied in with this shop that I've just recently moved into and been able to build out. And so yeah,
Well, I love the shop, man. This is a beautiful spot, and you got
yeah, it's my little
this
closet.
artwork and all that all over here. Dude, it's sweet. I mean, you're
Yeah,
in here every day, right?
yeah. So I do my best. I'm not in here every day. It's honestly, it's then only other business owners or maybe some others would relate to this. Like when you visualize something so hard for so long, like I visualized being in here,
Yeah.
3 years ago. When you finally attain that, it's just like shell shocking and intimidating. And so it took me a lot to get myself to get in here and actually like build the infrastructure and do everything, because you get so used to just working on the bench at home or in your garage, or there's certain new learning curves of working the business out of shop. And I've been trying to get to where I could really have customers in here, but it's a balancing act, because I have a customer in here, I have to tailor to them, and I have standards for them. And I also need to build inventory for my shops, and
Right.
everything else that I'm working on. And so it's a balancing act. I try to get in here every day, but I usually end up in here like later in the evenings,
Yeah.
when like there's less likely of someone barging in. Like you'd be surprised, man.
Sure.
I get random people driving by, and they'll pull over in their car and they'll be like, "I've been waiting to see you," and like they'll follow me on Instagram or whatever, and they saw I had a shop and they just want to run in, or they saw the sticker on the door.
Sure.
And like it's so funny. There's no idea of who I am other than this little sticker on the door, and it's a gray logo and blends in, and people still like they're like, "What's going on in there?" And for a while I'm big into motorcycles aside from spearfishing, and I had my motorcycles in the front. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
people used to poke in and be like, "Is this a motorcycle shop?" And I'm like, "No, it's a spearfishing shop." They're like, "Where's the spears?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Sold out.
Yep. Yeah, literally. Yeah, no, it's been getting to that point where you're ahead versus being a playing catch up is challenging.
It's definitely tough, dude. In every business, I think
Yes.
that's every business owner's challenge is getting ahead of the demand.
Yeah.
Especially in I think in the spearfishing industry, dude, like there's not enough manufacturers
Yes,
and not enough good
you're
manufacturers.
spot on with
So
that.
you are an exceptional manufacturer and you make quality products, and it's just, I think you can say, I'll let you say it, but like it's difficult for you to keep up
Yes,
because
yeah.
just there's so much demand for good quality products.
There's a lot of my stuff's back ordered. My site, I really neglected updating it just because I don't want to like. Well, big thing too, this industry is people will order something 2, 3 days before their trip,
It's
and
impossible
so
half the time.
yeah, and like so I keep my stuff built to order as I settle into the shop and finalize products because for one, like I have a lot of things change. I don't want to build and spend all this time on a product that's going to change.
Right.
So I order a small batch. And because I'm working with such luxe materials, the lead times are big.
Yeah.
And so my supply chain, I'm still fine tuning in. I try to be built to order, but I have to keep this balancing act of a little bit of inventory and also like not bulk ordering yet because I'm still fine tuning what I got
Right.
going on. Yeah, and so my biggest thing has been that I just am trying not to change things. I'm trying to get to where I am 100% content with my products, which I don't think will ever happen. Sort of like how artists are never done with their art piece, you know.
Yeah.
I just think that I could get to this point that I'm really happy with what I have, and I'm good enough with it to like just focus on the little add-ons. Like let's say I finish a spear gun, and then I just work on like little add-ons to the spear gun, like different band setups or different ceramic wheels or something. And so I can just sort of like, let's say I designed an AR-15, I can just design the scope and everything else and keep the AR-15 platform, leave it alone. And so, but yeah, it's just been fine tuning for a long time. But I think I'm right on the edge, and I really think that in the coming months, I think I'm going to be very content with what I have, and I'm pretty much there in most everything. But who knows if that's going to change. But yeah, a big thing is I just have been learning the engineering craft as I've been going,
Right.
and so it just keeps refining, refining, refining. And so, but I like I said, I think I'm finally like, okay, the pole spears are good, spear guns are good. Let's turnkey, let's scale, let's get it going. Because
Absolutely.
you get to this point where like you get a little bit like I'm not tired of the engineering, I love it, but I'm ready to just scale and be reliable, post the YouTube videos, work on the site, the more full spectrum of the business instead of just one little thing at a time or just the product refinement because
Right.
it's superseded pretty much everything that I could compete against, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I agree.
I'm a little
Totally.
biased though, but yeah.
Dude, I guess I am too, but absolutely. It's,
Yeah.
dude, you're innovating product that just hasn't been out there before. Like
Yes.
we were talking earlier, like nothing against those other manufacturers, but they're just taking a product and maybe improving a couple of things. You're absolutely just redoing it from the ground up,
Yes, and
which is
like
insane.
in all respect to them, like a lot of these companies, they've existed for a long time.
Yeah.
And so they have a product, it works. I have so much respect for stuff that has stood the test of time. And so a lot of my other competitors, so to speak, they're great. They're doing a great job, but like for me, like I'm just trying to cut a whole different edge. And that's why I always like I'll be posting on my Instagram, I always say, cut the edge. I'm trying to make a new cutting edge thing that sets a new standard, and that's very difficult to do. There's a lot of learning curves and adoption periods because a lot of people get used to using the old stuff. They don't want to change, especially fishermen, man.
Dude,
They
everybody's locked in.
yeah, everyone has a certain way of doing things. But I think that there's guys in other industries like Elon Musk and all these other people that are innovating enough that they're looking for that.
Yeah.
And so that's been my biggest thing. I anticipated a lot of like young guys and everyone like that coming in and being like, whoa, this is cool, and buying my stuff. But it's been a lot of these older guys that are just like, they're sick of the old stuff. They're like, I don't want that. Like everyone has that. I don't really like it. I use it, but I don't like it. And they're just looking for something different. I think secretly most everyone's looking for something better and different. And they're just not wanting to admit it.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to provide that. And so it should be about here. I really think so. Full test coming up and everything like
Hell yeah.
this stuff is literally 2, 3 weeks away from being like pool ready, actually like really fully dialed in to, there's a process to things.
Of course.
And my engineering craft, I go through phases of 3. most of my products, my pole spear has been at phase 3 for a while, but all these are going from phase 2 to 3, which is they're functional but not perfect, to being fully ready, scalable, finished. And like
Right.
it's really nice to be at that point. And so I really think that I mean, you can see my stuff is, I mean, you can kind of, people don't understand that where things are at when they kind of glance at it, but
Yeah.
they intuitively do. So like if I show you this, you're like, oh, that's a spear gun. It looks nice, but people will be like, oh, parts are flimsy or something's off on it, you know. And then if I showed you a finished product, you would grab it and go, okay, this is ready to shoot something.
Yeah.
And so like for me, it's I'm focusing on those little details that would, you go from looking at it and being like that needs some work to being like that's for killing something, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And so it's right on the edge of that. And I'm pretty stoked.
Absolutely, dude. Well, speaking of killing stuff, do you have any crazy stories you got or any memorable experiences with your gear that you got?
Yeah, I do. I touched on it earlier. That yellowfin story of the 70-year-old man was
Yeah,
pretty
so what
crazy.
happened, man?
And so we went to Costa Rica and we were at the Osa Peninsula. It's a far out region southwest in Costa Rica. And we're with this guy, Maestros, the masters of the ocean. These guys were beasts. They were so good. They do rod and reel fishing. And they put us on some crazy tuna schools, but we couldn't get near anything. Yeah, it was me and a couple others. That 70-year-old guy he's done it a bunch of times, and he has shot some really big fish over the years. And he's like talking this trip up, and man, we were like 3 4 days deep, no fish, nothing. And it wasn't us, we just couldn't even get within 50 feet of tunas. And so our last day we had run like 80 100 miles down, you know, all around zigzagging. We went off to some FADs, some really big fish aggregation devices in like 2,000 feet of water, 1,000 feet, real deep. And we were diving down these FADs, and I'm descending down, and I'm coming up on this like FAD buoy, and there's a freaking marlin, man. I look to my left, I didn't even see him. He's like 600 pounds, and I look to my left, and he's just swimming right there. And I'm sitting there, and I had a prototype spear with me. I'm aiming at him. I'm about to take a shot on him, and then something in me just was like, "Don't, don't do it." And so I pulled back, and that was the probably I'd say the first time that I had a really good fish that I could pull the trigger on, and I said, "Nah, no, I'm not gonna do it." That was a big fish, man. I think
Yeah,
he was coming to check me out, and he couldn't have eaten me. If he was a grander, he could have fit me in his mouth, but he was curious. He rolled up on me not knowing what I was, and it was very intimidating. Being in the water with that big of a fish is very weird. It's very weird because they're literally like being next to an elephant in the water. Yeah, but something told me, you know what? This is a sport fish. It's something that I pursued for a long time and caught on rod and reel. And I think I was already satisfied with having caught one on rod and reel. And I was like, this isn't a fish to be shot.
Right.
And that's a whole different story with spearfishing. A lot of guys will shoot marlin, they'll spear them. They're edible. They're very edible.
Yeah.
I know people that have shot them even on pole spears, man, and which is crazy. But yeah, they fed villages with the meat.
Sure,
but
man.
but I couldn't do it. I knew that the logistics involved and everything, something in me just told me like this is just a beautiful fish. Don't fuck with it. Yeah. And then that same trip later in the day, I guess I did a good omen. We ended up shooting some big yellowfins, and it was great. I took Hail Mary shots with small spear guns and just was nailing stuff. And it kind of, that's where the bug hit me, where I was like, I got to stick with the smaller spear guns and just keep dialing them in, because I was popping big yellowfins on small gear. And there's very few people that have engineered really powerful small equipment in this industry. Like I was saying earlier, most every big powerful spear gun for shooting these fish is massive. And I was down there shooting big yellowfins with smaller gear, and it was pretty awesome.
That's sweet,
Yeah.
man. Well, I love that, dude. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate you taking the time today, dude, to come in and sit with me. You know, I love the products. I can't wait to get out there with you soon, man. And you know, let's get after it soon. All right?
Yeah, absolutely,
Hell
man.
yeah,
Let's
dude.
do it. I'm
Yes,
down.
sir.
Yeah,
Well,
we get some diving with your ears messed up. But
yeah, but it'll get better. It'll
yeah,
get better.
yeah, we'll get after it.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Well, there you go, guys. Thank you, Quade. Thanks for being out here.
Of course.
Thanks for having me in the shop today. And
Absolutely.
you know, guys, if you want any spearfishing equipment, if you want anything custom made for yourself, you know, Quade does it all. The shop is here. He has all the equipment. He's got some stuff ready to roll. So guys, check out Black Reef. Check out all the beautiful stuff that he makes. It's high quality. You'll catch a lot of fish on it, and it's better than the rest. See you later,
Heck yeah,
guys.
appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Quade.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us on the Science of Fishing. We hope that this was helpful and you learned something for the next time you're wetting a line. Follow us on Instagram at Science of Fishing. And make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes and share this with someone you know. Until next time.